I'm Lauren Fisher, 45 years old, and I thought a family dinner at my mom's house would be a chance to reconnect, to share a meal, and maybe heal some old wounds. I couldn't have been more wrong. The moment the room fell silent, all eyes on my brother, he stood up, his face smug, and declared, "Your late fiancé was my business partner, Lauren, and I'm entitled to his entire estate." Gasps tore through the guests. My heart stopped as he held up a stack of papers, waving them like they were undeniable proof. He demanded every penny of the inheritance my fiancé left me, millions I'd been managing since his death. The room spun whispers, buzzing like static eyes darting between me and him. My mom just sat there, her face blank, not saying a word to stop him. My brother thought he'd already won his smirk, daring me to challenge him. But he didn't know what I held in my hands. A folder heavy with evidence sat in my bag, proof that could unravel his lies in seconds. As he gloated, I gripped that folder tighter, my pulse pounding. Then 5 minutes later, the door swung open. A man in a sharp suit walked in, and the room froze. Stick around, this drama's just getting started, and you won't believe how it explodes. Life after Daniel's accident was a haze of grief and deadlines. I'm Lauren Fisher, and at 45, I was drowning in both. My job as a project manager for a construction firm in Boise kept me sane barely. I'd spend long days at the office, sketching blueprints, meeting contractors, and pushing through plans for a new downtown high-rise. The work was demanding every detail, from steel beams to permits resting on my shoulders. My team counted on me, and I couldn't let them down. My boss, a guy with a quick smile and endless optimism, would say, "Oh, Lauren, you're the glue holding this project together." I'd nod, but the words felt empty. No amount of praise filled the void Daniel left. To cope, I started pottery classes at a studio near my apartment. The clay, cool and pliable under my hands, forced me to focus, to mold something out of chaos. The instructor, a soft-spoken woman with gray streaks in her hair, would guide us through shaping vases, her voice calm. "Let the clay lead you." I tried, but the ache in my chest never eased. Still, those Tuesday evenings became my refuge, a place to breathe, when the world felt too heavy. Back home, my phone buzzed with calls from Mom. Her voice was warm, but always circled back to my brother. He'd always been her favorite, the one who could do no wrong. Even now, when I was paying for her new house in a quiet Boise suburb, $20,000 a month wired to her account, she'd gush about his latest plans. "He's got big ideas," she'd say over the phone, her tone bright, always so ambitious. My stomach tightened. Ambitious? His last venture, a failed food truck business, had tanked in weeks, leaving debts I'd quietly helped settle. But Mom never saw his flaws. I'd watched her dote on him my whole life, her eyes lighting up at his half-baked schemes, while my straight-A report cards got a quick nod. I'd worked hard, climbed the ranks in a male-dominated industry, but it was never enough next to his charm. One Sunday, I drove my sedan to Mom's new place for dinner. The house was modern, all clean lines and big windows, a far cry from our old cramped rental. She'd set the table with her best dishes, and we sat over roasted salmon, her chatter filling the air. "Your brother called today," she said, her face glowing. "He's working on something huge, Lauren." "You should be proud of him," Carol said. I pushed a fork through my food, my chest tight. Proud I hadn't seen him since Daniel's funeral, where he'd barely spoken to me, too busy playing the grieving charmer. "What's he up to now?" I asked, trying to sound curious. Mom waved a hand. "Oh, you know Justin, always full of surprises." The dinners were routine every Sunday. She'd cook, pour wine, and talk about his dreams like they were reality. I'd sip my Chardonnay, feeling like a stranger in my own family. Work was my anchor. I led in meetings with architects, reviewed budgets until my eyes burned, and kept the high-rise project on track. But each night I'd come home to an empty apartment, the silence deafening. One evening, after a grueling day, my phone lit up with a voicemail from Mom. "Lauren, honey, your brother's coming to dinner next week. Isn't that exciting?" Her voice was all warmth, but my jaw clenched. His visits always left me feeling small, like I was still the overlooked kid trailing behind his spotlight. At pottery class, I mentioned it to Stephanie, a woman who'd become a friend. She was kneading clay, her hands steady. Family can cut deep. Stephanie said, her voice low, "But you're tougher than you think." I nodded, unable to explain the weight of Mom's favoritism. I'd poured everything into my career, but Carol's praise was always for Justin. "He's got such vision," she'd say, while my awards for managing complex projects got a passing glance. Stephanie set her clay down, her eyes sharp. "You've got your own strength, Lauren. Don't let them dim it." The next day at work, I was in a meeting presenting timelines for the high-rise. My colleague, a young engineer, nodded as I spoke, but my mind drifted to Justin. His smug grin, his endless promises. I stumbled over a sentence, and the room went quiet. "You okay, Lauren?" my boss asked. I brushed it off, but the thought of facing Justin at dinner gnawed at me. Back at my desk, I pulled up an old photo of Daniel on my phone. His smile, warm and steady, had grounded me through everything. Losing him in that car accident 2 years ago had shattered me. I'd found his engagement ring in his jacket, a promise we never got to keep. The memory stung, but it reminded me why I kept going. That night, I called Stephanie, needing her clarity. "Justin's always been Mom's golden boy," I said, pacing my living room. "But something's off about this dinner." She paused, then spoke carefully. "You're right to trust your gut. He's never been straight with you." Her words stuck with me. Justin's charm had always outshone my quiet determination, but I wasn't the kid who faded into the background anymore. I was ready to face whatever he was planning. The week after Mom's voicemail about the family dinner, I couldn't shake the unease crawling up my spine. I'm Lauren Fisher, and Justin's upcoming visit felt like more than just another Sunday at Mom's. His sudden warmth, that forced hug, it wasn't like him. He'd always been about flash, not family, and his cryptic big plans comments stuck with me. Something was off, and I needed answers before walking into whatever he was scheming. At work, I sat at my desk, blueprints for the high-rise spread out, but my focus drifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Justin: "Dinner next Sunday at Mom's. Be there. It's big." The words felt like a summons, not an invitation. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening. Why was he so insistent? His last big idea, a crypto startup, had left investors burned, and me quietly bailing him out. I leaned back, my mind racing, and decided to call Stephanie. Stephanie Moore, my friend from pottery class, had a knack for numbers. She worked as a financial analyst, digging into budgets and spotting inconsistencies others missed. I dialed her from my apartment that evening, pacing the hardwood floor. "Stephanie, it's Lauren," I said, my voice low. "Justin's acting strange about this dinner. He's up to something." She didn't hesitate. "He's always been slippery," she said, her tone sharp. "What's he saying online? I hadn't thought to check." I pulled up Justin's social media on my laptop, scrolling through his posts. He'd been vague but flashy, posing in a sharp blazer with captions like, "Ready to claim what's mine." No details, just hints of a game changer. My jaw tightened. His followers ate it up, flooding the comments with praise. But there was no mention of what he was planning. "He's posting about some big win." I told Stephanie, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "But it's all smoke and mirrors." She made a thoughtful sound. "Sounds like he's building a narrative. I'll dig into his financials, see what he's been up to. Give me a couple of days." I thanked her, my nerves settling slightly. Stephanie's ability to unravel messes was why I trusted her. If Justin was hiding something, she'd find it. The next morning, I was back at the office leading a meeting on the high-rise's foundation specs. My colleague, a structural engineer, nodded as I outlined timelines, but my thoughts kept drifting to Justin. His charm had always gotten him out of trouble. Failed businesses, broken promises, but this felt different, more calculated. I fumbled a slide and the room went quiet. "Everything okay, Lauren?" my boss asked, his brow furrowed. I forced a smile, muttering, "Just a long week." But Justin's text gnawed at me, a warning I couldn't ignore. I grabbed a coffee at a shop near work. the hum of conversation grounding me. I texted Stephanie anything. Yet she replied instantly, working on it. Found some weird transactions tied to Justin. I'll call tonight. That evening, Stephanie met me at a cozy cafe downtown, its wooden tables lit by soft lamps. She slid into the booth, her laptop open. Justin's been emailing some sketchy consultant, she said, her eyes narrowing. They're talking about a big payout tied to a family connection. My heart skipped a beat. Family connection, I asked, leaning in. She nodded, tapping her screen. No names, but it's not hard to guess he means you or Daniel. Daniel? The thought of Justin dragging my late fiancé's name into his schemes made my blood boil. What else? I pressed my voice tight. Stephanie scrolled through her notes. He's been researching estate laws, asking about claiming assets without clear documentation. It's shady, Lauren. And there's more. His bank records show payments to this consultant. Small but frequent, like he's planning something big. I sipped my latte, barely tasting it. Justin had barely known Daniel, always dismissing him as too serious. Why was he digging into his affairs now? I thought back to a time, years ago, when Justin had borrowed money from me for a sure-thing investment. He'd promised to pay me back, but when it tanked, he shrugged it off, and Mom had defended him. He's trying, Lauren, she'd said. That memory fueled my suspicion. Daniel's accident had left me his entire estate, his savings, his investments, a fortune I hadn't touched. Was that what Justin was after? I gripped my mug, my knuckles pale. He's targeting the inheritance, I said, my voice low. Stephanie's eyes met mine, steady and sure. I'm not saying he's lying outright, but he's definitely hiding something. I'll keep digging. The next day I was at my desk reviewing permits, but my mind was elsewhere. Justin's text about the dinner kept replaying in my head. It's big, he'd written, like he was staging a performance. I opened my laptop, checking his social media again. His latest post showed him shaking hands with a man in a suit, the caption reading, "Big moves, big rewards." The comments were all hype, but no one asked what he meant. It felt like he was setting a trap and I was the target. Stephanie called that night, her voice brisk. I got into an old account Justin used for freelance gigs, she said. He's been emailing about securing a legacy through family ties. The messages stopped right after Daniel's accident. My breath caught. You think he's coming for me? I asked, pacing my living room. I think he's been planning this for months, Stephanie said, her tone grim. Be careful at that dinner, Lauren. I didn't sleep well after that. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, half expecting another text from Justin. He sent one the next morning, his tone overly friendly. Can't wait to see you Sunday. Lauren, wear something nice. It's a big deal. I didn't reply, my hands trembling. At work, I struggled to focus my notes for the high-rise project riddled with errors. My boss noticed, pulling me aside after a presentation. You seem distracted, he said, his brow furrowed. I mumbled an excuse, but Justin's words echoed. It's a big deal. Stephanie texted later, urging me to meet again. We grabbed lunch at a deli near her office, the smell of fresh bread calming my nerves. She pulled out a notebook, her handwriting neat. Justin's been talking to that consultant about a reveal at the dinner, she said. He's planning something public, Lauren. This isn't just about money, it's a spectacle. My stomach churned. Justin loved attention, but this felt predatory, like he was building a stage to humiliate me. I thought of Mom, her blind faith in him, and my resolve hardened. Whatever he was planning, I wouldn't let him win. I asked Stephanie to dig deeper, to find anything that could expose his lies before the dinner. She nodded, her expression fierce. I'm on it, she said. I left the deli, my steps steady, ready to face whatever Justin had in store. Stephanie's warning about Justin's plans for the family dinner kept me up at night. I'm Lauren Fisher, and the thought of him using Daniel's name for his schemes fueled a fire in me. I wasn't going to let him rewrite my fiancé's legacy. I needed proof, something solid to tear down his lies before he could pull off his spectacle. Stephanie was already on the case, and I was ready to dive in with her. The next morning, I met Stephanie at her office, a small space downtown cluttered with files and coffee mugs. She was hunched over her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I found something, she said, her voice low but urgent. She pulled up a scanned document, an old email from Justin to his consultant. It mentioned a partnership with Daniel's company dated just weeks before the accident. My stomach twisted. Justin barely spoke to Daniel, I said, leaning closer. This is fabricated. Stephanie nodded, her eyes sharp. Exactly. The email's vague, but it's a start. I'm tracking down Daniel's old business records to cross-check. I spent the day at my office blueprints for the high-rise ignored as I dug through my own files. Daniel had been meticulous, keeping every contract and receipt from his contracting business. I pulled out a box from my closet at home that evening, dust coating the lid. Inside were stacks of his papers, proposals, invoices, partnership agreements. My hands shook as I sifted through them, searching for anything tied to Justin. Nothing. Not a single mention of my brother. I called Stephanie, my voice tight. There's no record of Justin in Daniel's files, I told her. He's making this up. She didn't pause. I'm not surprised, she said. I reached out to a contact at Daniel's old firm. They're pulling his records from their archive. If Justin's name isn't there, we've got him. Her confidence steadied me, but the clock was ticking. The dinner was days away, and Justin's smug texts kept coming. Counting down to Sunday, he wrote, his tone taunting. I didn't reply, my focus on the truth. The next day, Stephanie called with an update. The firm sent me a batch of Daniel's contracts, she said, her voice tense with excitement. No mention of Justin anywhere. But there's something else, an old letter from Daniel to his accountant stating he worked solo on major deals. It's dated a year before his accident. My heart raced. This could be it, the proof to shut Justin down. Send it to me, I said, my voice steady. She emailed it over, and I printed it at a shop near my office, the clerk raising an eyebrow as I made multiple copies. Big meeting, she asked. Something like that, I muttered, tucking the originals into my bag. Back home, I spread the documents across my dining table, marking key sections with a highlighter. The letter was clear. Daniel had no partners, no shared ventures. Justin's claim was a lie built on nothing but his own ambition. I thought of Mom, her blind faith in him, and my anger flared. She'd bought every word of his schemes, never questioning. I called her, hoping she'd listen. Mom, Justin's lying about Daniel, I said, forwarding her the letter. They were never partners. She paused, then sighed. Lauren, he's just trying to build a future. Don't be so hard on him. I gripped my phone, my knuckles pale. You're defending him, I asked, my voice rising. This is about Daniel's legacy. Mom's tone softened like I was overreacting. Justin admired Daniel Loren. Maybe they had plans you didn't know about. I ended the call, my fury boiling. She was choosing him again, even with evidence staring her in the face. I stared at the letter, my resolve hardening. Justin wasn't just after money, he was trying to rewrite my past with Daniel. I wasn't going to let him. Stephanie met me the next evening at a cafe, her notebook filled with more findings. Justin's consultant has a reputation for shady deals, she said, sipping her espresso. He's helped others fake business ties before. I found a forum post where Justin asked about claiming estates without proof. My jaw tightened. It was bold even for him. What else do we need? I asked. She leaned forward. I'm waiting on one more file from Daniel's firm, a signed affidavit from his last big project. If it confirms he worked alone, Justin's story collapses. I spent the next day distracted at work, my team noticing my short answers during a budget review. You good, Lauren? My boss asked. I nodded, brushing it off, but my mind was on the dinner. I pictured Justin standing at Mom's table, waving his fake papers, his followers ready to amplify his lies online. I wasn't going to let him play me. That night, Stephanie's contact came through. The affidavit arrived in my inbox, a clean scan of Daniel's signature, stating he'd handled a multi-million-dollar contract solo. I printed it, adding it to my folder. It felt like a weapon, one I'd use to end Justin's game. I rehearsed my plan in my apartment, pacing, as I practiced what I'd say. "You're lying, Justin," I'd tell him, holding up the documents, watching his smirk fade. I imagined Mom's face, her excuses crumbling as the truth hit. I bought a sharp blazer for the dinner, something that felt like armor. Stephanie called as I folded the papers into my bag. "You've got everything you need," she said, her voice firm. "He won't see this coming." I nodded, my heart steady. The dinner was tomorrow, and I was ready to turn Justin's stage into his downfall. The morning of the family dinner, I stood in my apartment, my navy blazer buttoned tight, the folder of documents heavy in my bag. I'm Lauren Fisher, and I was ready to face Justin's lies head on. His texts, his smug posts, his so-called big reveal had pushed me to the edge. I wasn't walking into Mom's house unprepared, not this time. I checked my bag one last time. Daniel's letter, the affidavit, the email Stephanie had uncovered. They were my shield, my weapon to protect my late fiancé's legacy. I drove my sedan to Mom's house in Boise, my hands steady on the wheel. The dining room glowed with soft light, the table set with her best china, a spread of roasted chicken and wine signaling a celebration. Guests, family, friends, a few of Justin's online followers, chatted loudly, their phones out ready to capture his moment. I took a seat near the back, my fingers brushing the folder in my bag. Justin stood at the head of the table, his suit crisp, his grin wide. Mom beamed beside him, her eyes locked on her golden boy. My stomach churned, but I kept my face calm, waiting for his move. Justin raised a glass, his voice smooth as he quieted the room. "Thank you all for coming," he said, pausing for effect. "Tonight's about family legacy and truth." My pulse quickened. Here it was. He took a deep breath, his hand waving a stack of papers. My sister's late fiancé, Daniel, was my business partner. He declared, his eyes locking on mine. "He built a fortune, and I'm entitled to $500,000 that belong to our shared vision." Gasps rippled through the guests. Phones flashed, capturing every word. Mom nodded, her face proud as if his claim was gospel. The lie was bold, shameless. Whispers spread, eyes darting toward me, some pitying, others curious. Justin's smirk dared me to react. I stood, my legs steady despite the fury burning inside. "That's a lie," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I pulled the folder from my bag, holding up Daniel's letter. "This is from Daniel's accountant, stating he worked alone, no partners, no shared ventures." I didn't stop there. I raised the affidavit, my tone firm. "This confirms Daniel handled every major deal, solo. You were never part of his business, Justin." The room went silent. Phone still raised, recording every second. Guests exchanged glances, their excitement turning to unease. Justin's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "You're just jealous, Lauren," he snapped, his voice sharp. "Daniel trusted me. We had plans." I shook my head, stepping closer. "You faked those papers," I said, my eyes locked on his. "You've been scheming to steal his legacy." I handed the documents to a family friend nearby who scanned them, her expression shifting to shock. The whispers grew louder, guests shaking their heads, some typing furiously on their phones, already sharing the twist. Mom stood, her voice trembling. "Lauren, stop this," she said, her hands clasped. "Justin's trying to honor Daniel. You're making a scene." I turned to her, my chest tight. "Honor," I said, my voice low but sharp. "He's lying, Mom, and you're letting him." Her face fell, but she pressed on. "He's your brother, Lauren. He deserves a chance." I stared at her, my anger flaring. "He's using Daniel's name to steal from me?" I said, my words cutting. "And you're standing by him." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her eyes darting to the guests who were now watching her as much as Justin. Before Justin could respond, the door opened. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped in his presence, commanding. "I'm Michael Walsh, attorney for Daniel's estate," he said, his voice steady. The room froze, phones turning toward him. Guests murmured, some stepping back, sensing the shift. Michael turned to Justin, his eyes narrowing. If you're claiming a partnership, we'll need verified contracts and a full audit. The crowd erupted in whispers, cameras zooming in. Justin's face drained of color, his hands shaking as he gripped his papers. That's not necessary, he stammered, his voice weak. Michael didn't back down. It's standard for estate disputes, he said, addressing the guests. The documents Lauren presented raised serious doubts. An audit will settle this. Justin's followers, once eager, now whispered among themselves, their phones capturing his panic. Some shook their heads, disappointed, while others slipped their devices away, no longer interested in his story. I felt a surge of relief, my shoulders loosening for the first time that night. Michael's arrival was unexpected, but his demand was exactly what I needed. Justin tried to salvage the moment, forcing a laugh. This is about family, he said, his voice wavering. Let's not make it ugly. But the guests weren't buying it. Several stood gathering their coats, their excitement replaced by skepticism. One muttered, I thought he had proof, as she headed for the door. Mom sank into her chair, her hands covering her face, unable to meet my eyes. Justin, tell them it's true, she said, her voice barely a whisper. But Justin had no answer, his eyes darting around, searching for an escape. The family friend handed the documents back to me, her expression uneasy, as if she sensed Justin's lie unraveling. Michael approached me, his voice low. I was hired by Daniel's estate last year, he said. I didn't expect this, but I'll ensure the audit happens. I nodded, gratitude steadying my nerves. Justin retreated to a corner, his followers drifting away, their phones down. The dinner felt different now, the warmth tainted by his exposed deception. I stood my ground, the document still in my hand, my heart racing but lighter. I'd faced Justin, and he'd faltered. His lie was crumbling before everyone, and Mom's silence spoke volumes. As the guests thinned out, I stepped outside, the cool Boise air hitting my face. I'd protected Daniel's legacy, but this wasn't over. Justin's downfall was just beginning, and I was ready to see it through. Michael's demand for an audit hung in the air, and the dining room at Mom's house felt like it was holding its breath. I'm Lauren Fisher, and I stood there, document still in my hand, watching Justin's world unravel. His face, pale and frozen, betrayed the panic he couldn't hide. The guests, once captivated by his charm, now stared with doubt, their phones lowered as the truth sank in. I'd exposed his lie about Daniel being his business partner, and Michael's arrival had sealed his fate. Justin stammered, his voice cracking. This is a misunderstanding, he said, clutching his fake papers, his eyes darting to the crowd. But the family, friends, and followers who'd hyped him up were no longer buying it. A woman in a red dress shook her head and whispered to her husband, He's got nothing. Another, a guy who'd been filming, slipped his phone into his pocket, his face disappointed. The room's energy shifted, the celebration turning sour. Justin's followers, who'd come to cheer his big reveal, started to drift toward the door, their murmurs sharp with judgment. One posted a clip online, the caption reading, Big talk, no proof. It spread fast, likes and retweets, piling up, tearing down his carefully crafted image. Mom stood up again, her hands trembling. Justin, tell them it's true, she said, her voice desperate, her eyes pleading with him. But Justin just looked away, his jaw tight, unable to meet her gaze. Mom, he started, then stopped, his words failing. I stared at her, my heart heavy but resolute. He's got no proof, Mom, I said, my voice steady. He lied about Daniel and you backed him without question. Her face crumpled, doubt flickering in her eyes. She reached for Justin's arm, her voice breaking. You said you worked with him, she whispered almost to herself. Justin pulled away, his silence damning. For the first time, I saw Mom grapple with the truth, her faith in him cracking. Michael stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Mr. Fisher, he said, addressing Justin directly, we'll need all your alleged contracts by tomorrow for verification. Failure to provide them will trigger a full investigation into your claims. The guests gasped, some pulling their phones back out to capture the moment. Justin's hands shook, his papers slipping to the table. I don't. I need time, he muttered, his voice barely audible. Michael raised an eyebrow. Time won't change the facts, he said, turning to the crowd. Daniel Brooks' estate is protected, and any false claims will face legal consequences. The room erupted in whispers, the guest's skepticism now open disdain. A man who'd been clapping for Justin earlier muttered, "What a scam," as he grabbed his coat. Another guest, a family friend, approached me, her voice low. "I'm sorry, Lauren. I didn't know he'd go this far." I knotted my throat tight, but I didn't respond. My focus was on Justin, who stood alone now, his followers gone, his confidence shattered. His online empire, built on flashy promises, was crumbling in real time. Social media was ablaze with posts calling him out, hashtags like "Il Justin lied" trending locally. Sponsors he'd bragged about started pulling their deals, their statements curt and damning. I turned to Mom, her silence louder than any words. "You chose him over me," I said, my voice low but sharp. "Even when I showed you the truth." She opened her mouth, her eyes welling up. "Lauren, I didn't mean," she started, but I shook my head. "You did," I said, my resolve unshaken. I'd spent years carrying the weight of her favoritism, but this was the final straw. She tried to speak again, her voice pleading. "He's still family," she said, but the words fell flat, drowned out by the truth. I slipped the documents back into my bag, my heart racing but lighter. Justin's lie had been exposed.